Hi folks, this is Bill from ATMakers, and today we're going to be talking about webhooks. Now, webhooks are ways for you to enable environmental control of anything that can work with if this then that or Alexa, and they're a way to do that through the web. Now, that's really useful for AT users, specifically those who use speech generating devices. And tonight we're going to be talking about one particular device and showing you how to use it. And we're going to have several variations of this video showing you how to use webhooks in general and then giving you the details on a particular device. Tonight's device is the PRC accent, the Prentke Romich accent, and the software that they use for it, which is called New Voice. Now, before we get into this particular device, let's think about what we're trying to do here. We're trying to control the environment of an AT user. So for example, you might want to turn on a fan. You might want to signal somebody by flashing lights, something like that. And you've got somebody who has limited mobility or perhaps uses an eye gaze or a switch-based system. Now, as most of you probably know, the landscape in environmental controls has changed recently. Alexa is one of the biggest motivators for that. Probably the other biggest is a system called If This Then That, or IFTTT.com. If you're not familiar with this, you really should be. It is one of the most useful things in environmental controls, and it's important that I give you a quick overview of it right now. Now, If This Then That is available at IFTTT.com, and there's no charge for the users of this. They are paid by the various systems that want to be able to interact with each other. And essentially, they have positioned themselves as the hub, the connection point between things that are events and things that you want to trigger. So when a text message comes in, you want something to happen. When your clothes are done in the dryer, you want it to notify you. All of those things all fall into the same paradigm, which is if this, then that. If something happens, I want you to do something else. If you take a look at what the triggers are, what the things you can actually act on, they're kind of huge. It's kind of amazing. You can work on emails, you can work when an SMS text message comes in, you can work on Facebook and Twitter. All of the things that you use all the time can be hooked into if this, then that. The number of things you can actually control is just as impressive. For example, if you want to change the temperature in your house, you can look up thermostats and find there's a number of different smart thermostats like the Nest that you can control. If you want to do something like change your lighting, there are a ton of different ways to do that, from using like a Philips Hue system to Leviton. All of these are different vendors that you can hook into if this, then that, and control things around your home or just in your life in general. Now, you can use a lot of different devices here. In our case, we are using a Wemo Mini Smart Plug. It's a relatively inexpensive device. You can plug it in and then plug any other device into it. At that point, you can control it from their smartphone app, or you can use If This Then That. Now, I'm not going to go into the full setup of the Wemo switch that exists out there. There's a video you can watch from Wemo, from Belkin. And all these devices are going to be set up a little bit differently. But basically, you're going to plug this in, you're going to hook it up to your smartphone. It comes with its own app. And as you can see at this point, this is working. I can use the app to turn on and off my fan. The interesting thing happens next. It's when we actually hook this smart fan up to If This Then That, and therefore up to the webhooks, which let our AT users access it. Now, the service we're going to use from If This Then That is called Webhooks. And if you look under the Services tab and you type in Webhooks, you'll learn all about it. The idea behind Webhooks is that you're going to get a link that if somebody visits that link in a browser or uses the tool to visit that link, it's going to send a notification to If This Then That that you want to activate some other tool. For example, I have a link right here that says Fan Demo. When I click on that link, it's going to actually turn on or off my fan. Now, you'll see there's a couple of second delay there. That's normal. Webhooks take a couple seconds of delay. They're actually one of the faster If This Then That hook, but it certainly works. And when this link was followed on my screen, on my browser, the fan activated. So the question is, how do you create one of those links? Well, the documentation right here for webhooks tells you pretty clearly what that link's going to look like. Up here at the top, you'll see that there's a key. This will be specific to yours. It's blurred right now, but yours won't be blurred. And then it tells you kind of what the link's going to look like. It's going to start with maker.ifthisthenThat.com, and then here it's going to have an event name, and you can change this. So if I wanted to call this toggle fan, I can create an event called toggle fan that I can then assign to turn my fan on or off. You can see you can also pass values in. We won't get to that, but it's a very handy thing if you want to do some advanced tricks. At this point, this link right here that I just copied, that link will send the message toggle fan to if this then that. Now that we have a key and we understand how the links are going to work, let's go ahead and make a new applet using our webhook. The this part of if this then that is the webhook. So we'll search for webhook and click on it. Here you'll see the trigger for the webhook is when you receive a web request. So we'll click on that. It asks us for the event name, which we just called toggle fan. We'll hit create trigger. That's it for the if part. The that part is what we want to happen. In our case, we want to turn on a Wemo device, specifically a Wemo smart switch. Here it shows all the Wemo options, including turning things on or off, flashing them, or in our case, toggling the device on or off. The Wemo screen now asks us which switch we want to turn on or off. In this case, we have it named as the ATMakers fan, which is what we put in when we set it up on our smartphone. Here's a basic review screen that reminds us that if the event toggle fan is triggered, then we're going to turn on or off the ATMakers fan. And at this point, our applet is ready. So at this point, if anybody follows the link that says toggle fan, this will work. Let's test it out. So if we click test it, this should work. And it does. It took a couple extra seconds just to scare me. So this is really good news. At this point, no matter what system is using it, if anybody calls this URL, it's going to toggle that fan on or off. Let's take a look at how it works in this particular speech generating device or software. So here we're looking at New Voice, which is the software that runs on the Prentke Romich accent. A New Voice is a core-based and a LAMP-based system, and this is set up with core words and the Unity system. But even in this system, there's always a need for things like pages, specific pages that are given for specific activities. In New Voice, they're found here under Pages, and in our case, we want to put things into the area that is close to the Remote section. To make this simple, I went ahead and created a separate page called Webhooks. So our goal here is to create a button much like this toggle fan button right here, so that when you press it, it turns the fan on or off. Unfortunately, Prentke Romich doesn't have the built-in webhooks feature. The good news is that they run on top of Microsoft Windows. And that means that because you can call out to another Windows program, we can install a program that does this webhook call for us, and we can assign a button to that. In our case, we need a piece of software that will fetch a web page and store it without having a full-blown browser. The perfect tool for that here is called wget. It's available on most systems like Linux and Mac, but it's not built in on Windows. The good news is it's open source and it's free and it's available and it's really easy to install. I've included a link to wget below, but if you just search for wget for Windows, you'll find this page. Here we're going to scroll down and take the complete package, except sources, which is the first option, and we'll download this file. It'll start automatically, and we'll get an executable file that we can then run to install it. Walking through the wizard, you'll say accept to the agreement. This is the GPL. And here it's going to tell you where it's going to install this. Usually it puts it under Program Files x86/GNU Win32. There's a long story as to why that's where it puts it, but it is important to know that that's where it puts it. We hit next, and when we hit finish, it will install it. Now that wget's installed, let's go ahead and set up a button to go ahead and call it. First, we click the Setup button, and then we hit Setup Key. We choose the key that we want to set up. We'll use this one right next to the current fan button. Next, we click the Define Key function, and here we hit Insert Tool. We could search for the Run Command tool, but it's actually right under here under Computer Access, and we hit Run Program. It now asks what we want to run. It's already in the program files x86 directory, and here, this is why it's important we knew it was GNU Win32. We click here, we go to the binaries directory and click wget.exe. Now that seems complicated, so let's do it again. We're going to click the define key function, insert tool, computer access, run program, GNU Win32, and then bin. And bin means binary, it's where the actual program lives. The name of that program is wget.exe, and when we click this, it will add that right up here to the top box. If we arrow over, we can see that it is now going to run the program at program files, GNU Win32, bin, wget.exe. Now that's going to run the fetch program. We actually need to tell it which URL to fetch. Before we paste that URL in, we're going to add an extra little command here. We're going to add dash capital O space dash. And what that does is it throws away the file when it fetches it. It's not a big deal if you don't do this. You'll just have a whole lot of little files in your downloads directory. Going back to if this and that, this is the URL that we were going to actually copy. So we're going to copy it. We go back into New Voice and we hit paste. Now if you scroll all the way back, you'll see that this entire big long URL has pasted in here just fine. And it should be right after our -o dash, there's our URL. The only tip I will give you is that right here, I would take off that S. That S makes it go over a secure connection, and some wget installations on Windows have a problem with that. So there's no downside to taking off that S in this case. Once that's done, we're going to hit OK, and you'll see that the run program is set up to call our URL. While we're here, we'll change the icon. We'll find a fan. Maybe this fan this time. And we'll change the label to toggle fan. Hit OK. OK. And this button should now work. Let's take a look and see if it does. There you go. Let's see if we can turn it off. And it's off. Now some of you may have noticed that there was a little flashing window that popped up for a second when I clicked this button. While that's true in New Voice on Windows, it will not be there when you're actually running in the device mode. That pop window won't pop up and you won't see it at all. It's important to note that we're not just setting up Wemo outlets. By hooking into if this then that, there are literally hundreds of things that we can control. For example, on the right here, I've added the ability to send an email or send an SMX text. The four apples on the far right actually control a device that was made using Maker technology. To my right, there's an inexpensive device called an ESP8266. They run about $15, and a big matrix of LEDs. Now, these aren't complicated, they're very simple Maker technologies, but they hook into if this then that as well. What that means is that when you hit this red button, it will make that light change to red. Yellow and green act accordingly. We paired that with an inexpensive IKEA apple to make a great indicator of mood or whether or not a restroom's in use or something like that. We even used webhooks to open and close a door for a 16-year-old girl. And next week I'll be installing a garage door opener that's also IFT connected. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope you look into if this then that and see how it could help you and your clients. If you have any questions, as always, reach out to us either on Facebook or at atmakers.org. And as always, good luck and have fun.